Well, you join me in the studio. This is, forgive me for all my mess everywhere, but this is where I do the practicals that you'll see in the magazine on a regular basis. And we're looking at the Pico turntable. I'm just about to start spraying it. I've done all of the prep work. Largely, so let me move this light out of the way a second. Move it to one side, you might be able to see a bit better then. My smoothie, forgive the clutter. So this is the base unit. This was given to Phil to construct as part of a practical in the magazine. The links will be towards this on the back issues, so you'll be able to download that copy of the magazine if you'd like to see how this was constructed. But it's the Pico turntable, and these are widely available and a great option for modelers to use as a platform to then create different variations on turntables. Essentially what you get is an injection moulded base. There's 3 segments there, they're all identical. You can see there's a little vent here, or grill type drain feature, and underneath that you've got these sort of injection moulded holes which you could use to mount the turntables to a base if you want of ply or something like that. Just gives you a good base. You've got a lip around the edge there, so this will sit nicely into a cutout on your model railway. You can just go around with a jigsaw and cut that out. Yeah, nice plain amount of detail. You don't need much on a turntable like this. I mean, you can just about make out there's some markings there of the concrete pour when it would be constructed. You can see we've got the guide rail around the edge there with a little bit of chair detail, not too much. And then you've got this little bit of phosphor bronze, like 2 half moon segments, so that allows you to change the polarity of the turntable as it spins around accordingly. Most of the detail on this kit and most of the construction time will be spent on constructing this. Now, if there is a bit of advice I could give you, that is to build the turntable, but don't glue absolutely everything into place. I had a bit of a difficulty getting this one out because I think Phil had glued the collar in place and it was very difficult to remove the turntable, and it needs to be removed really for spraying purposes, just because it makes it that bit easier. Obviously this being steel, the base being concrete, they're going to be 2 different colours and different sorts of weathering on the 2, so I'm going to be airbrushing. It just makes it that bit easier to separate the 2 and be able to handle it like this. You've actually got a great handle here as well whilst you're weathering, which makes it perfect for airbrushing. To remove the gear, now this is the main ring gear which sits on that axle there underneath the turntable and is then driven by the worm off this. They're fairly universal, these little kits. You can just put as many gears in them as you want to gear them down accordingly, but that's just driven off that little worm drive, that gear. A little Allen key. Now Allen keys are fairly universal when it comes to modelling, but you can obviously get many different sizes. What I used is my set of Allen keys here. Obviously, I dabble with cars as well, so I've got myself one of these sets, but they don't cost much at all. I think this one was about £10–15 thereabouts, and as you can see, you've got metric and imperial. You never know when you're going to need an Allen key, and because there's all the different sizes there, you can just, even things like layout legs, things like that, occasionally they can be using Allen bolts, or even to connect your layout together. Just for a neater finish, you can use some Allen bolts. Invest in a set, it won't go amiss. There you go. So anyway, back to the turntable. So yes, what I was on about, don't assemble everything or glue absolutely everything. And by that I mean things like the rails. So these here you can see just push out. And because they can push out, we can take that out and I can spray that a rail colour, rusty, because obviously it's going to be different from the wooden deck here with all of its sort of faded wood and oil spill finish. And once they're painted, I can just slide them back into place. The same goes for the collection of guide wheels here as well. Injection moulded wheels. And the beauty of that is that because these are going to be a different colour again to the decking, I can just spray them a different colour and insert them back into place properly when it's all done. So wish me luck. I'm going to get started with the compressor. The airbrush I'm going to be using this time is this is from Harder and Steenbeck, an Infinity. Just take it out of its box there. There you go. You've all seen an airbrush before, or maybe you haven't. Well, this is an airbrush. This is a dual action airbrush, so you press down once for air, you pull back to introduce paint into the flow. And the beauty with these Infinities is that you can change the needles. They already from the box give you a spare needle, but you can change different needle sizes to have a larger or finer spray pattern accordingly. And the same with the nozzles. You've got different nozzles you can fit here. I've never really played around with nozzles on airbrushes just because you don't really need to. I mean, for most of the work that I'm doing, something like that with a sort of fan spray pattern will be fine, but you can get other ones which are less intrusive. It just stops you from clouting the needle and damaging it when you approach your work. And then you've got different sized cups that you can fit to these. They're all universal throughout the Infinity range, and if you could check out the Harder and Steenbeck website or your local stockist, you'll find that there are many different cup sizes depending on how much spraying you're going to be doing. Most of the colours for this project will fit in this cup quite easily, and I don't mind topping them up occasionally. I'm going to be using acrylics from the Life Colour range, and particularly in this heat that we're having at the moment, they dry very, very quickly, more so when they're airbrushed. So most of the battle with this is going to be keeping the nozzle and the needle clean of paint, because it's going to be drying very, very quickly. So let me get on with this and we'll catch up in a bit and see how it looks. Right, so airbrushing away here at the moment with this little airbrush, the Infinity CR Plus from Harder and Steenbeck. It's working well, but just wanted to show you something here actually. Just put that to one side for a second. So just working around in a bit of a fan shape here, so I'm going side to side like this and turning it round as I work. But for those who don't see the importance of a water trap in your when you're using a compressor, so a water trap is one of those little devices that fits just before your airbrush, or it can be anywhere in your airline really, as long as it's after the compressor and before your airbrush. And its job is to remove water or moisture from the compressed air. Now this is a studio which is air conditioned, and I'm just going to switch on the compressor here and show you how much water is actually coming out of the end of this nozzle here. Probably see little droplets flying out. You can actually hear it as well at the same time. And all of this, of course, is going to be a problem if you're using solvent paints like enamels, where you're diluting it with white spirit. That's going to create a real problem with your paint finish. Water-based problems, with water-based paints, obviously it's not so much of a problem. It's just going to dilute them a little bit more, but it's not ideal. So get yourself a water trap. I'll just switch that off for a second. There are quite a few airbrush manufacturers that actually supply airbrushes with water traps, but if they don't, just get yourself one. And you can actually have one or two in the line, but always remember to purge them. There's a little purge valve on the bottom. Just hit that occasionally just to remove all that moisture in there. There you go, thought I'd just show you that. Well, you'll have seen from the magazine article that the weathering went, I think, okay, as you can see from the images. There are one or two things I'd do differently. Obviously this was an experiment to solely use an airbrush, so you don't get as much detail as you can achieve with a finer paintbrush by creating little speckles of rust, for instance. But it's a subtle effect, and one that will blend in quite nicely if you use the same techniques across all of the buildings in the same area of your layout. I hope you enjoyed it.